You ready?
There we go. Where's Rob?
There he is.
Hey,
Hey guys.
Hey.
Rob. How you doing?
Good. Sorry for the cluttered books. I'm trying to. This window has a lot of glare, so.
I like it.
Everybody comes on and apologizes for what's going on behind them.
But can I be the one apologizing?
Look at what Jason's got going on behind him.
Michael?
Yeah. I think my wife has shamed me into a messy everything is in the office. I know.
The last person said that the reason why it looked the way it looked was their wife.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Nice. Now that Mother's Day is over, we can throw our wives into the bus.
Well, I mean, that's a really tough weekend. There's some sort of recovery time for us after a job well done. This Mother's Day, I did pretty well up until about 9 p.m. on Mother's Day. And then, I don't know, I just said the wrong thing and it started. And you're just like, oh no, wait, what am I doing? And then I had to dig out, and I did. I recovered. But
So close.
it was close. It was close.
In this week's episode, Craig Pretzinger and Jason Feltman meet Rob Galbraith. He doesn't always come on our podcast, but when he does, he's the most interesting dude in insurance. Most will scramble away from natural disasters, but when Rob was Director of Property Underwriting at USAA, he would drive towards tornadoes, earthquakes, and hurricanes to collect the ever-important data. Ready? Let's go.
Rob, the most interesting man in insurance.
Yes, I am not interesting personally, but I've had some cool experiences in insurance. So,
I love it.
yeah. Nick Lamparelli. I don't know if you guys know Nick, but he does a Profiles and Risk podcast. He's the one that interviewed me a couple years ago and gave me that, and it stuck. So,
I love it, man.
yeah. So actually, there's a group from the Insurance Institute for Business and Home Safety. They're just launching out right now to chase some thunderstorms out in the Great Plains to try to catch some hail. And I went with them a couple years ago. So driving into the dark clouds instead of away from the dark clouds was pretty crazy. And
It's fun.
one time where I was driving 65 miles an hour and the storm was actually going faster than that, overtook me and just totally smashed the windshield. And we stayed on the road and all that, but it was pretty hair-raising experience. So,
Which is 10 times more interesting than sitting in an office.
Yeah, any day outside of an office is a good day at work.
Yeah.
Unless you have.
And a helicopter with San Diego Fire Department, kind of having them tell me all about their risks. I happened to be in Hawaii for a conference, and when I landed, like an hour later, an earthquake started that ended up with the lava flow and all that. So yeah, I just had some pretty cool experiences in my career.
That's
When
cool.
was And sorry, you go.
We always do this. Yeah. That's the whole show.
Right.
We don't even get to talk. We just, yeah.
By the end, we get really mad at each other.
There you go.
No.
So that brings up a good point, man. You have a very interesting background. Love it. Can you share some of that for the people that might not know who Rob is?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I'm born and raised in Michigan, in Ann Arbor, Michigan, actually, to be specific. I did not want to go to the hometown school, so I did not go to the University of Michigan. I went to Michigan State instead. So, proud Spartan, go green, go white. And I was an econ major. So after I graduated, I got to work at the Federal Reserve in Washington, D.C. for 2.5 years as a research assistant, which was great. And this is in the mid-90s, so this is like pre-data science. That wasn't a thing or whatever. We were just kind of, ran statistical models for the PhD economists. And probably my biggest claim to fame was there was actually a memo that I gave to Alan Greenspan, who was the Fed chairman at that time, every week. And I asked him one time, or asked his admin one time, there's 80 research assistants. I'm one of, a gazillion people giving him stuff to read. Does he actually read all this stuff? And she said, oh, yes, he reads every single piece of information he gets. He reads them in his bathtub at night. And I just had this mental image that has never left me 20 years later of Alan Greenspan in his bathtub reading my mouth. Right? So And so then I moved to San Antonio for personal reasons. I always say I moved for a girl, and so I've been here the last 20 years, and I'm with another girl. I'm on my second marriage, but I have 3 kids. Actually, my oldest turns 18 today, if you can believe it, 14. And
awesome.
so I caught on at USAA, and early on, kind of bounced around a little bit in my career, did a lot of programming, but I really wanted to get to the business side. And so started supporting the actuaries and tried my hand at those actuarial exams for a time, but I just couldn't hack it. I got to be honest. And so I had the opportunity to move to the underwriting department in 2005. They were starting an analytics shop, and they said, "You've got your CBCU. You're not passing those exams. You don't need to do that anymore. Like, just come have some fun building this team." And so that kind of led to almost a 15 career in the underwriting department at USAA, doing various jobs, culminating in the last 5 or 6 years really focused on catastrophic risks. So hurricanes, wildfires, tornadoes, hailstorms, earthquakes, lava flows, you name it. And I kind of had the experience working with a lot of tech companies and data provider startups, doing AI, machine learning, all sorts of really cool stuff. And so that led to me writing the book, The End of Insurance as We Know It, and actually to my current role as the Director of Innovation at AF Group.
Cool. Talk about the book.
Yeah. So here, I got a copy here. I'm like down to my last 20 copies I need to reorder. So that's it. It's pretty crazy to actually be able to touch it. I know, right? Yeah, there you go. Oh, sorry. And early last year, I was reading a lot of the headlines about Insurtech, and I was meeting with companies that I just felt like I was getting a glimpse of the future. I would leave a meeting and be like, wow, that's what insurance is going to be like 10 years from now. And I just was blessed. I was fortunate. I just got to see a glimpse of the future, like right here, right now. It's like, seeing Amazon like pre-internet days or something like that, right? Or seeing Google when everyone's using, just doesn't know how to search for stuff. So that's really the moment that I felt like we were in for insurance. And so I started it as a very personal exercise. I just opened up a Word document one night. I was like, I got to get all this stuff that's in my head on paper. And I just kept writing. And I looked up and I had 25 pages of notes. And I called the document brain dump, just get it all out there. And then I happened to be talking with Tony Kanyas from the Insurance Nerds and Carly Burnham. They happened to be visiting in San Antonio for a meetup. And so we had a conversation, and they told me they had published their own book called Insuring Tomorrow about kind of millennials in the workforce. That was a very good book, very compelling. And then they were telling me in San Antonio that they were going to publish a new book from Bill Wilson, who spent 40 years in the industry, very, very knowledgeable, working with independent agents. His book was all about resolving claims disputes. And so Bill's very funny, so he's got a great sense of humor, but he's also a teacher and an educator, and he provides a lot of wisdom and knowledge. And so anyone could have wrote his book because he's so well known, and he chose the Insurance Nerds to publish his book. So kind of got the wheels spinning a little bit. And I said, well, if I were to shape this kind of mess that's out there right now into kind of an outline, and, would you be interested in publishing a book? And they said, yeah, absolutely. So spent the next 3 months kind of moving to an outline. Ultimately, the outline was 60 pages long. It's longer than like any paper I ever wrote for college or anything like that.
Wow.
And so then I showed it to them and just tried to give that mess some structure. And so it kind of had, here's the chapters, here's what it would be about or whatever. And so they said, yeah, go for it. We're going to greenlight your project. So it took about another 4 months to write it. And I had 2 people busy helping with the editing. So I just kept cranking. I never got writer's block. And, it kind of had some hiccups towards the end, but ended up releasing it in February of this year. And it's already sold over 600 copies. It's actually been sold in 10 countries, which is just amazing to believe. And the week it came out, actually, I had an individual from Nigeria sent me a note on Twitter. I'd love to buy your book. I was like, I'll just send you a copy. Tell me where you're at. And so then the next day, somebody from Nigeria hit me up, and I thought it was the same guy. I was like, oh, don't worry, your book's on your way. And I realized it was somebody else. I was like, first week my book comes out, 2 people halfway around the world already know about it, this kind of small, niche subject and independently published book. And it's just a testament really to all the stuff I talk about in the book, right? What a world that we live in 2019.
That's so cool. How many pages is it now? Started with 60.
It's over 300 pages. So it's funny because at the beginning of the book, talking with the publisher, they, because asking about length, they kind of said, probably something somebody could read on an airplane ride. So at the beginning of the book, I talk about that you should be able to read it on an airplane ride. And most people are like, yeah, New York to Tokyo.
Right.
So it's a little bit longer than that.
So the title's so interesting. Can you give us some highlights? What to expect?
Absolutely. Yeah. So, so we worked hard on the title. We kind of kicked around some different ones. And then that one, I just threw that one out there and it just instantly stuck. We had that REM song right in our head. And it's intentionally that way. So even an underwriter can be a marketer sometimes. So the book is really divided into 4 sections. So the first one is what's wrong with insurance? Like, why are we talking about, all the problems insurance has? And for your audience, they're probably very familiar with that. But in fact, there's lots of pain points, right? Hundreds of pain points. But I try to categorize it into 7 different ones. It's insurance is too expensive, right? It's a very costly product for many people. And unlike your electric bill, where it's like, well, if I don't pay it, I don't have electricity, I don't have heat, I don't have, TV, my cable bill, my cell phone bill, my, water, right? I don't pay the water bill, I can't turn on the water. It's very obvious, like kind of the benefit that you get from these things. Insurance is not that way. It's like, well, I pay it because I have to have it for auto or for home or for my business, but 95% of the time you don't use it, right? You don't have a claim. You don't want to have a claim. I don't want to use it. And so it's just this kind of weird, is it a product or it's service? And you're spending a lot of money on it. It's also a cash drain, right? So it's forced saved. It's like you've got to pay. You can't just, I guess you could put it on your credit card, but you're going to quickly max out your credit card if you do that, right? So I'm paying for something that there's a small chance I might actually need, right?
Right.
It's too confusing. So when you do try to go use it, right, you're like, oh, good, I have a claim, fix this. Oh, well, I got a deductible and a limit. That's actually excluded, right? So when you try to go use it after you spend all this money on it, it just oftentimes leads to a lot of frustration, right? A lot of misunderstanding. And if your claim's denied, that's a very frustrating experience, even though that might be the absolutely right dispensation, right? Based on the facts of that particular loss, but it's not fun to try to use it and to kind of run through that. It's too easy to game the system on the other hand, right? So I just tweeted out today, we all kind of have like our Fitbit and we're all trying to get our 10,000 steps in. And I guess somebody in China has designed a rocker that you can put your phone in to rock it back and forth to get your 10,000 steps in. And I guess over there, it like lowers your life insurance premium or something like that. Like, this is what happens. People game the system, right? Yeah. And then the rest of us kind of all have to pay more in premium because of people like that. It doesn't cover everything or everyone. It doesn't cover all covers of loss. So there's a lot of holes in this product, even though it's 300 years old. The second part is really, where's our Uber moment, right? So taxis were kind of a highly regulated industry that nobody liked, right? And all of a sudden Uber comes along. It's just so much easier, so much more convenient with the app on your phone. It's usually a fraction of the cost. You don't have to haggle with a cabbie over, do they take credit cards and things like that. So, but insurance really is different, right? It's not an Airbnb. It's not buying, airline tickets. It's not, the online retail store that an Amazon is or a Netflix. It's very complicated. It's a complicated financial instrument that's a legal contract. So there's a lot that goes into insurance. And so I really kind of spend quite a bit of time like, hey, why haven't we had that kind of, Uber moment in insurance yet? The third section talks about all the technologies that I think we all see in the press and buzzwords, right? Blockchain, AI, telematics, smart home, like all this stuff. And a lot of people have told me, Rob, like that's the first kind of accessible definition or description of these. So if you're a real tech head, it's not really for you. You may know more about one or more of these technologies, but it definitely gives a broad overview that's meant to be accessible for a general audience. Just to give you some background, as you see some of those headlines, you can maybe understand a little bit better, like if this is significant or not significant. And it also talks about really tying it back to those fatal flaws. Like what are some of the the problems or the use cases that these technologies could be brought to bear on, and why are they so exciting? Why do you see so much press about them? And then the fourth is really kind of crystal ball time. I certainly don't have any special insights, but it's kind of designed to be a way to think about all this going forward, to structure your thinking, and really help guide you, I guess, no matter what seat you're in. So if you're an agent, if you're a claims adjuster, if you're working at a carrier, really anywhere in kind of the ecosystem, you're, early in your career, you're in the middle of your career, you're at the tail end of your career. I think we're all really struggling with this. We're hearing all sorts of terms about, seed funding and, disruption and incumbents. And, it's like, wow, when did Silicon Valley invade my little, insurance corner of the world? So it's a lot to deal with. And, it's really meant to be a guide to help everybody as we kind of enter this uncharted waters for insurance. And I know we've all said that in the past, right? But it really is coming. I've seen it firsthand. I've seen it. Certainly not there yet. We're still at the cusp in the early stages, but it's absolutely meant to be kind of an essential guide for both startups, right, that don't know anything about the insurance world and want to come in and speak our language about frequency and severity and loss ratios and premiums and all sorts of stuff, as well as for an insurance professional to kind of understand this Insurtech world.
Cool, man. Like, that's awesome. I love tech. I see where it's going. I can imagine all of the, changes that's going to happen with, sales agents in general, right? Because the internet is the middleman. We used to be the middleman. It's pretty easy when a sales agent's the middleman, because, hey, you have to have them. Now you have sales agent plus the internet. So you're almost competing. Most companies and stuff are going to be smarter and smarter with AI. So it's definitely interesting to think about where that's going.
Yeah, if you think about all the questions you got to ask and answer, and they can be confusing, and capturing all that data in the back and forth, right? Either on the just a quote, right? A coverage, certainly on the claim side as well. If you had somebody come in, right, a prospect come into your office and just say, hey, I'd like to get a quote. Here's my blockchain. Boom, it has every piece of information already verified on it. And in, a minute, you're able to run a bunch of quotes and really talk to them about their coverage and coverage needs. And you don't have to spend time with the data entry or verifying this piece of information or that, right? What's your payroll? How many facilities do you have? What's the square footage of your house? Don't include your garage, things like that, right? It would just make life so much easier. And I think for agents, certainly, I think some agents are having a lot of success doing business in traditional ways, and to the extent that they continue to have success, I think they absolutely can stay in that world. But I do think people are finding efficiencies, right, in the digital age, and it could be simply process automation or make some of the process smoother, but it's also potential acquisition, rather than cold calls or knocking on doors. You can actually put out a Facebook ad or use AdWords in Google, or really kind of that digital marketing. And then obviously folks that kind of see your shingle, I guess, out there, right, from a digital marketing standpoint, may want to start to engage with you in a digital channel. And maybe that results in a phone call, maybe that results in somebody coming physically to your office. But I just think at certain points, these kind of mixed channels are the way that a lot of folks like to do business in 2019.
Yep.
Why have so many of the insurance companies been so slow to adapt to these newer technologies? As all this stuff comes online, and I think in the captive world, it moves even slower, because where Jason and I have had a lot of we've been blessed to talk with a lot of really cool people that are outside of our ecosystem, and it's like, whoa, wait, what? It's like they've had this curtain around us, and we couldn't see out there. And now that we're outside that box, we're seeing some things that are really, really exciting. But in our world, it just seems like everything is moving so slow, right? And it's 2019.
I think it's a combination of three things if I had to kind of boil it down. The first, ironically, is legacy technology, right? So insurance companies were one of the very first to embrace some of these old mainframe systems, right? Before we even invented a personal computer that sat on your desk back in the 80s. And, you know, somebody described it to me. They said legacy technology was perfect for insurance because you had this kind of batch processing, right? You didn't really care about the real time. You cared, let me capture all the information overnight or during the day and then have it run overnight, or have renewals all batched to kind of run all in one cycle overnight. So for insurance, working in kind of daily chunks, right? Like that kind of batch processing on a mainframe technology made a lot of sense. Well, now we live in an IoT world where you're just streaming data all day long. It's just a fundamentally different world than it was in the 70s. So the second part, of course, is you don't want to mess up like your policy administration system, your agent management system, your claim system. Like if you screw with that too much, right, and you break something, that's a huge problem. It's a problem for your business. It's a problem potentially from a legal standpoint, right? You're talking about a legal contract. You're talking about lots of money, a financial incident. Like there's a lot at stake when it comes to insurance. And so it's definitely kind of the Hippocratic oath, first do no harm, right? You really don't want to mess with something that's working. And quite frankly, in many of these legacy things, the people that built it are retired. They're long gone. It may be written in COBOL or Fortran or some old language that they don't teach in schools anymore. Like you don't even know what your system, it's like, I have a binder and it tells me that the system is doing X, Y, and Z, but maybe it's doing A, B, and C instead. I don't really know. And so you gotta wade through and really understand that. And then the third part, of course, is the regulatory environment. Just that, making sure you're in compliance, making sure you've ticked and tied everything. Tony Kanyas once said, Rob, do you know why there aren't any radical insurance companies out there? I was like, no, why? He goes, because they've all gone insolvent, right? Only the conservatives survive in insurance. And so there's some truth to that, right? That it's like, hey, those of you that follow the rules and manage your money and are very cautious and careful, those tend to be the ones that last long. One of the things I talk about in the book, and I also talk about in my keynotes, is if you pull up the top 10 carriers for property and casualty in the US, the youngest carrier was founded in 1937. I mean, that's unheard of staying power. If you look at any other industry, you're going to have much more turnover. And yeah, there's some mergers in there, some acquisitions, but for the most part, if the youngest company was founded in 1937, and probably half of them were founded in the 18-somethings, that's just tremendous staying power. And so that conservative culture that's lasted over decades is definitely hampering adoption to change. And really that urgency, right? It's not just acknowledging the need to change, that's part of it. I think a lot of carriers are there. It's more the urgency behind it, the pace of change that we're not seeing in insurance the way we see in other aspects of our life.
Yeah, because everything's like doubling every year over year, doubling, tripling. I mean, it's not, that's what I tell everybody. With technology, it's not this linear, gradual, rise. Like every year, it's crazy how much more data we get. It's unreal.
Yeah, no, you're spot on, Jason, because I saw a chart in the book too, and it says, if you think about an exponential curve, right, it starts out fairly flat. It looks linear. So you can say, well, I've been in the industry 20 years and I've seen change. And so change looks like this over that 20 years. So I'm just going to project that forward and think, well, yeah, this is where I'm going to end up 20 years from now. But when you're on an exponential curve, you can't do that, right? In fact, that history actually kind of hampers your ability. And younger people coming into the industry, yeah, maybe they only have 2 or 3 years of experience, but their experience is on this part of the slope, right? So they actually can do a better job anticipating where all this is going than somebody that has more experience and thinks the slope is flatter. So you're absolutely right about that. The other thing I mentioned is I opened the book with a story about my dad. I took him on a road trip at the beginning, over the summer last year, to go see his baby sister that lives in upstate New York. So we went from Texas to upstate New York. And I went to go pick him up, right? Because he has a hard time driving and all that, doesn't want to be on planes. And he had a bunch of maps from AAA. He's like printed out. And I was like, okay, I used to do that when I was a kid, but like I've got GPS. And, we crossed the border from Missouri to Illinois. He diligently put away the Missouri map and pulled out the Illinois map, right? And it was like blowing my mind. Like, oh my God, this is like Back to the Future.
What is this?
Lauren, what is this thing? And so think about GPS, right? It's streaming real-time data. It's giving you the road conditions and the traffic and all that live in real time, what it is right now, and feeding it to your phone. It's got AI in the background to tell you like how long it's going to take you to get to your destination, right? And we don't think of this as being advanced technology. We all use GPS each and every day. So to take us out of that paper world in that context doesn't seem like a big stretch. We're all using it today. But if you switch over to insurance, all of a sudden leaving my paper world does feel like this huge leap that's really hard. And you know all these terms, it gets really confusing. And I tell people we're already using it in other aspects of our lives. It's really just bringing insurance into the 21st century.
It's crazy to think about. I mean, Ronald Reagan ran the free world with something not even this powerful, right? Like, that is unreal. That wasn't long ago. Well, it doesn't feel long ago.
No Twitter.
No tweeter.
Twitter.
Hey, iPhone was invented only in 2007, right? It's been around a dozen years. I mean, it's like indispensable.
Unbelievable.
I've heard this thing before.
Yeah, and it just shows that curve, right? Because when it came out, it didn't do much. There wasn't an app store. It only did a few things. But you could search the internet, not very well, and it's the snail's pace. It was like the first
and how much more preferable is this to the PC, right? Like you'd rather be on this. It's easier.
Absolutely.
It's remarkable.
Absolutely. Yeah.
For the audio listeners, I was holding my iPhone up.
Yeah, nobody searches anything. I mean, if you look at the data of who searches a website, I mean, it's ridiculous the amount of people that search on their phone rather than a desktop. A desktop isn't really. It's like a
mainframe, right? Back in the day. Like, oh, I got to go to my office. Like, I log on my desktop. What?
Yeah. I don't want to deal with that. I mean, I don't. Like, think about how long it takes some time to turn on, to open some systems. It's like the phone just, you don't even have to restart it. It's always on.
There. It's all right in your fingertips, literally.
Yeah. It's crazy. So what are you up to besides promoting the book? You got a lot going on.
I do, yeah. So a lot of travel, a lot of keynotes, and other events. I happened to go to Istanbul, Turkey, about a month ago, and so that was a really cool event. Had never been to that part of the world, and gave a talk, and actually got selected as the most influential speaker. So that was really cool. We actually was on a panel as well. So that was on a boat that was literally. We waited until we were right between Europe and Asia to start the panel. So that was just a really cool experience. So doing a lot of that, and folks can follow me on LinkedIn and Twitter and Instagram and Facebook and kind of see some of the adventures. Also, I have a lot of my travels on the book's website, endofinsurance.com. And then starting this job at AF Group, so I've been there just over a month. I work for a gentleman by the name of Abel Travis. So some of you may know Abel. He has a podcast called the Insurance Innovators Unscripted Podcast. And that's actually how I first got introduced to Abel, was listening to his podcast over the last year or so. And then I happened to meet him at a conference, and we kind of started a dialogue. I sent him an advanced copy of the book last year for his feedback. And when this opportunity opened up, he reached out and said, would you be interested in applying? I interviewed and felt very fortunate to get the job. So AF Group, AF stands for Accident Fund. That was kind of has its roots in Michigan. So it's a bit of a homecoming for me. I work from my home in San Antonio, Texas, but AF Group is headquartered in Lansing, Michigan. It was originally, way back in the day, the state fund of Michigan, and became privatized, and has grown and acquired some other brands over the years. And so I just broke into the top 10 in the workers' comp space last year. So really proud of that. But actually looking to grow both in the workers' comp and then outside of workers' comp. So there's a lot of other lines that we're looking at getting into, as well as some specialty agreements that we're trying to do and really pursue from our CEO, Lisa Corliss, all the way down. We have a culture of innovation, and it's a small enough company that, you know, if you have a good idea, you can just walk to somebody's desk and kind of talk about it. And I've already really enjoyed that experience. As opportunities have come up, we've been able to kind of vet them really quickly and pursuing some exciting opportunities. So just super thrilled to be with AF Group and looking forward to what we can accomplish over the coming years.
And what do you do there?
Yeah, so I'm a director of innovation. So I have a team of 3 individuals that report to me. And, innovation is, a lot of people think it's really chasing what I call BSOs, right? Bright, shiny objects, but it's really a discipline. That's something that I want everyone to know. So we're trying to instill it at AF Group, and I would encourage everyone to do the same. It's just like underwriting. It's just like HR, IT, finance, right? Claims, actuary. It's no different than that, So, there's different functions. There's really scouting, right? First of all, kind of meeting all these Insurtech, seeing what's in the landscape, what's out there. In addition to kind of scouting some of the companies and the technologies and seeing what's out there, doing some market intelligence, competitive analysis, kind of seeing what are competitors doing, where do we think some market opportunities are, and then really working with internal stakeholders to understand their pain points, their needs, both from a growth and diversification strategy as well as kind of efficiency and automation standpoint, looking outside and inside, and really try to bring all that together. And then creating business plans. So being very rigorous about, okay, if we were to leverage this technology and pursue this opportunity, what would it cost? What would the return be? We have limited resources, limited amount of capital, limited amount of people, limited amount of technologies. And so we have to be very selective about what we choose. And then once we decide to go down a different path and get the agreement all the way up to the executive level, then actually, working on the execution is that. So we don't wipe our hands and over the wallet at that point. We're actually along for the ride as that car is being built. And at the end, we want to make sure that it's working well. And eventually we'll turn the keys of the new bright shiny car over to somebody, but we actually have a working product that's accepted by the business. So, it's a challenge because you're constantly wearing so many different hats and at different parts kind of the innovation process. But I wouldn't want to have it any other way. It's not just a glorified procurement or vetting arm, the front door, right, before the business kind of steps in and says, okay, the adults are in the room, we're going to take up our role here. It's really working alongside the business, again, as a true discipline.
At what point is it that we're young, we're trying new stuff, everything's, like we're sponges and we are so creative and there's no rules, there's no box, right? And then at some point you grow up and you got all these constructs and it's like we don't try stuff anymore. Why? And then to your point, Craig, it's like old insurance agents or agencies, not agents, agencies, or insurance carriers and stuff, they're just so confined to their old systems. They're not thinking so out of the box. So, I mean, not having funding, as much funding as some of the big companies is also an advantage because you're not held by, what's been going on since 1930, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a huge balance, right? You don't want it to simply be top down. Of course, you've got executives for a reason and or you got, principals for a reason. They've been in the industry, they kind of have seen things. And so they can spot some of those opportunities, but you don't want to be the pet projects department chasing down every rabbit hole that everyone kind of throws over to you. So you also want to be able to do some bottom up, and that's where that market intelligence, be able to kind of go to the executives and say, hey, here's what we're seeing on the ground. Here's what people are asking us, right? These are the types of exposures that are coming into the door. We're seeing more gig economy workers. So, one open question is like, hey, if half the workforce is gig economy by 2027, and what are the implications for a workers' comp insurance? Like that could look very differently under that kind of environment. So, having those type of conversations and driving those, so it's absolutely communication kind of all the way up and down the channel. And then, I think it's so easy to get caught in our routine of the day to day. So again, this kind of goes back to that discipline. Do you have the discipline to challenge your organization, your way of thinking, kind of stress test everything, right? And you may come back to know we're doing things as efficiently as possible, or we know we're inefficient, but there's too many opportunities to chase, so we're only doing these 3. One of the favorite stories I have is actually from the Steve Jobs biography by Walter Isaacson. If any of you have read that, where Steve Jobs is like all his top people kind of get in a room and they gnash teeth and pull hair for a whole week, getting down a list of 100 project ideas to 10. And then they present the top 10 to Steve Jobs, and he just draws a line under number 3. He's like, we can only execute on the top 3. And just that simplicity and that cleanliness, I wish every organization had that. Too often, everyone's trying to chase all 100. They don't even bother to narrow it down to a 10, much less draw the line at under number 3. So that's really, I think, the challenge for all of us. And it's very easy to get bogged down in the day-to-day, and it's really get bogged down in the complexity. And again, all the technology and opportunities, it's just overwhelming.
It is. So Rob, if you had to do it all over again, what's the number one thing you would change?
On insurance?
Just through your journey of what got you to where you're at today and all the experiences you've had.
Yeah. I think for me, I'm a little bit of an in the moment type person, kind of enjoying the journey, not the destination so much. So I don't know that I would necessarily change that, although maybe being a little bit more thoughtful. I'm not the most organized person in the world. I hate to admit, I'm not the most careful planner. So I'll give you an example. When the book went on Amazon, I just put it on Amazon, right? Here you go. The book's published. It's already out there. And I had a friend of mine that's published a couple of books. He goes, where are all the reviewers? Like, you need to have like 20 people lined up to give you 5-star reviews right away or whatever. And I was like, well, I just want people to put whatever they want for the review. Like, I didn't really think about it, right? And I've been fortunate that I've got some kind people that have gone out there and done reviews on their own, and they've all given it 5 stars so far. So I'm really excited about that. But that's all genuine, that's all authentic. I haven't like seeded it or anything like that. So I have kind of a naivete that I think as I entered it, it was like, well, I didn't think about that. And I didn't think about, well, if you don't have reviews, then Amazon doesn't show it to the right audience and all that. So, for those of you that have read it, or if you read it and you like it, please leave a review on Amazon, because that definitely, helps. I've had a lot of people privately tell me they like it or send me a LinkedIn message, and I'm like, that does me no good. You have to put the review on Amazon, right? So, but, I think there's a balance there, right? You can only plan so much. And at some point, I sat down with my 14-year-old. He was like, what are you doing? I don't think this is a very responsible thing to do. You're leaving your company, you're publishing a book. What's going on? And
He said that?
Son, like, you only have one life. And at a certain point, you kind of just make these. I said, I wouldn't want to live with the regret of having this book kind of in me and never writing it, never publishing it, right? So, I think for me, that's the lesson, is to try to look before I leap a little bit more than I do, but at the same time, fully stay in the moment.
That's awesome.
It's awesome, man. Look at that silence. I'm curious in your vision. In your vision,
it was so great. We all had to take a moment.
We always steamroll each other, so I'm like, I know Craig was going to say something, so we're like looking at each other.
I'm curious, that vision of Greenspan in the bathtub, are there bubbles? Does he use bubble bath?
That is a great question. I don't know. I will say that I read his autobiography after he retired from the Federal Reserve, and he actually specifically mentions that he has a really bad back and that he would soak it every night. So it kind of gives some credibility to, she's not just telling me that, yeah, it's still,
you got to get a painting of that.
It's hard to unsee that in your mind. Yeah, you can't hit the undo button on that one.
The Greenspan bath.
That has to be a piece of artwork at some point. Somebody has to paint that.
Like the dogs playing poker, but it's Greenspan in the bath.
Right.
That's right. Yeah.
Awesome.
Now, there was one time I went to my office at the Federal Reserve, and I had, a set of papers in my chair, and there were graphs in the write-up on this memo. And I saw a couple numbers circle and said, these numbers are wrong. Check them again, AG. And it was Greenspan himself. And so, like, it's the type of thing where I had to show my boss, and he signed up, and then he showed his boss, and he showed his boss. Like, this went through, 5 or 8 different people to get from me, lowly research assistant, all the way to Greenspan Fed chairman. The fact that none of them had seen it, but yet in that moment of clairvoyance, probably in the bathtub, he saw it and returned it. So thankfully the papers were dry. They weren't, dripping, or I didn't so, but I did kind of wonder when I grabbed it, like, I'm just going to fix that real quick.
Corrected by Alan.
That's right. Yeah.
So Rob, where can we get the book? Obviously, you mentioned Amazon.
Yeah, so it's exclusively on Amazon. It's available in both the Dead Trees paper version as well as Kindle. I will tell you, interestingly enough, the paper version is outselling the Kindle 2-to-1, so I find that kind of interesting. And you can also go to my website, innovinsurance.com. So it's got not just the links to buy it on Amazon, but a whole lot of content. So podcasts, some media, book events. So I've got a book event coming up in Denver this Monday, the 20th. We've got events planned for Dallas and Los Angeles and Atlanta, and we'll try to do more over the summer and coming into the fall. So more info to come. So it's always good to kind of go back out periodically and check innovinsurance.com. It's also got a list of all the keynotes, and to the extent that they record it, put it on YouTube or whatnot, you can actually see some of those keynotes as well. So that's a great
cool.
resource.
Awesome.
Cool. And is there an audio? Is there an audio version?
No, so I'm glad you asked that. So no, that's another thing that kind of from a planning. So I've gotten that request. Probably the number one request I get is for an audio book. And a lot of people have told me they really enjoy having the author actually read, his or her work. So that is the plan. And the long pole in the tent is me and my schedule and just having the time to sit down and record it. When you write 300 pages and then you have to read it out loud one word at a time over many, many hours into the audio version, that takes the time. So it is coming because I think it would be perfect for that kind of format. TBD, I don't have a release date yet, but yes, we are actively pursuing an audiobook version.
Awesome. Rob, thank you so much. This has been great, man. I love your take on everything.
Yeah, thank you guys so much, Craig, Jason. It was a pleasure to be on with you guys. Just really appreciate the opportunity to come on today.
Awesome.
Hey, we appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Your Insurance Dudes podcast is sponsored by Agency Vault, an industry leader in agency coaching, hiring and retaining top talent, and sales training with the 7-step trusted advisor sales framework. Are you up for the challenge? For $99, you'll get 28 days of access and an opportunity to join our private platinum coaching group. For more information, navigate to www.agencyvault.com.
Hey, thanks for checking out the Insurance Dudes. Hey, please subscribe. We got some really great stuff coming out.